They always sound reasonable at first. You tell yourself you'll start when the timing is better, maybe after the pressure eases up, maybe once you've had more rest, or when the distractions settle, or the doubts quiet down. You convince yourself that readiness is just one more checklist away, more experience maybe, a bit more certainty, a sign that the risk is finally worth it. But all of that is just a delay wearing a rational face. And just like that, another day disappears. Most people don't even realize it's happening. They think they're being careful, strategic, patient. But there's a difference between being smart and being scared. That voice inside your head pretending to protect you, it's not wisdom. It's fear dressed in a reasonable tone. And it knows exactly how to keep you where you are by convincing you that waiting makes sense. Excuses don't shout. They don't argue. They whisper calmly, and they sound like logic. They'll say, "This isn't the right time. You're not ready yet. You should probably wait a little longer. You need to know more before you move." And it sounds smart. It sounds safe. But that's the trap. By the time you've justified your delay, the opportunity is already gone. By the time you've convinced yourself to rest, momentum has already vanished. You don't realize how fast your window closes until it's sealed behind you. Excuses don't feel like killers. They don't storm in and destroy your life. They slowly dehydrate your ambition until there's nothing left. They give you just enough comfort to stop moving. They wrap you in a story where everything is justified, except progress. And here's the truth. Nobody ever changed their life by explaining why they couldn't. The people who built something real, the ones who rewrote their path, didn't have better timing, more certainty, or perfect conditions. They had urgency. They moved anyway. If you wait for comfort, you will never start. If you wait for confidence, you will never lead. If you wait for permission, you will always follow. Your future doesn't get created by thinking about it. It gets built every single time you act in spite of your excuses. That's the difference between growth and stagnation. One moves through resistance. The other sits beside it and tries to explain why now isn't the moment. You say you're tired, but you'll be more tired after another year of staying the same. You say you're unsure, but clarity only comes after motion, not before. You can't talk your way into transformation. You can't plan your way out of discomfort. You have to choose the discomfort that leads forward over the excuse that keeps you still. Most people choose comfort today and regret tomorrow, but the cost of comfort isn't just time. It's potential. It's vision. It's the future you'll never meet. And let's be honest, most excuses don't come from circumstances. They come from identity. You tell yourself, "This is just who I am." You say, "I've always been this way." But that's not truth. That's programming. Every time you make a choice based on who you were instead of who you want to become, you reinforce the very identity you're trying to outgrow. You say, "I'm not a disciplined person," but how do you expect to become one if you only act like someone who isn't? You say, "I've never been consistent." So what? Start now. Be terrible. Keep going. That's how consistency is built. The future isn't for the version of you that stays the same. It's for the version that keeps showing up even when it feels unnatural. And here's something most people never admit. Excuses give you control until they don't. At first, they feel empowering. You're the one deciding not to act. You're the one choosing to wait. But over time, the control you think you have becomes a cage. Suddenly, you're not choosing anymore. You're just stuck. The walls close in quietly. One skipped morning becomes a week. One delay becomes a season. And the life you promised yourself slowly fades into memory. You look around and wonder why nothing has changed. But you were there for every missed opportunity. You held the pen. You crossed out the actions you didn't feel like taking. And now the story's blank. People will tell you to be patient. They'll say, everything happens for a reason. They'll try to soften the sting of delay with philosophy. But that's not what you need. You need action. You need to look at the habits you've been defending and ask, are they building the life I want? Or are they preserving the life I'm trying to leave behind? You need to see your excuses not as comfort, but as chains. Not as insight, but as inertia. Not as valid reasons, but as clever lies that keep you from progress. Because every excuse you let slide becomes part of your identity. And identities become patterns. And patterns become prisons. If you want to change where you're going, you have to start by changing what you allow, what you tolerate, what you justify. That's the turning point. Not motivation, not inspiration. Awareness, ownership, action. The moment you stop letting yourself off the hook for every little thing, that's the moment you start becoming dangerous. Not to others, to your old self, to the version of you that gave up easily, that needed comfort, that folded under pressure. Because when you stop believing your excuses, you become the kind of person who no longer needs them, and that's when everything starts to shift. The most dangerous thing about excuses is that they sound reasonable until you look at the results, until you realize the people who believe them the most are the ones furthest from the life they wanted, and the ones who ignored them are the ones who got somewhere. Excuses let you keep the same habits while pretending you're changing. They let you say the right things while doing nothing. They give you a story to tell others when deep down you're not moving at all. You know what excuses really are? They're the shield we hide behind when we don't want to face the truth. And the truth is this: if your actions don't align with your goals, your excuses are lying to you. You don't need more time. You need more focus. You don't need more motivation. You need more follow-through. There's nothing noble about explaining why you're not improving. There's no award for crafting the most polished justification for staying average. The world doesn't remember the almosts, the maybes, the close calls. It remembers the ones who broke through. You say you're waiting for the right season, but seasons pass. You say you're not ready, but nobody ever is. You say you're doing your best, but deep down, you know you're capable of more than what you're doing now. Excuses won't admit that. They'll protect your feelings. They'll soften the discomfort. They'll keep you from asking the hard questions, because hard questions lead to change. But at some point, you have to stop defending the version of you that's going nowhere. Stop protecting the identity you've outgrown, because if you don't, it'll cost you everything you were capable of becoming. Here's a truth people don't like to hear. If you keep letting excuses run your life, you'll never meet the strongest version of yourself. You'll never know what you could have built. You'll never know how far you could have gone. Because every time that stronger version tried to rise, you shut it down. Not with failure, not with weakness, but with delay. You told it later. You told it not today. You told it it's not the right time. And after a while, it stopped answering. You've been talking yourself out of the life you want for so long, you've started to believe that hesitation is wisdom. You think doubt means stop. You think discomfort means danger. But doubt is just friction, and friction is part of the process. You will never become someone extraordinary by waiting for the friction to disappear. You become someone extraordinary by learning to move through it, deliberately, consistently, even when you don't feel ready. That's the difference between the people who build something and the people who just talk about it. One side accepts the discomfort, the other keeps trying to explain it away. You can keep saying you'll start tomorrow, but what do you think tomorrow actually brings? A new version of you, a more disciplined mindset, a perfect situation. Number. It brings the same habits you took to sleep. It brings the same routines you refuse to question. It brings the same story, unless you're the one who rewrites it. And the longer you postpone that rewrite, the more power your excuses gain. They start to feel like facts, like truth, like reality, until it's no longer, I don't feel like doing it today. It becomes, I'm not the kind of person who can. That's what excuses do. They transform small choices into identity. They convince you to shrink what you're capable of just to stay comfortable. And then you wonder why you're frustrated, why you feel stuck, why your ambition is suffocating. It's because part of you knows what you could be, but the rest of you keeps making deals with delay. You don't need more time. You need a breaking point, the moment you stop caring how uncomfortable it's going to be, the moment you get tired of hearing yourself explain the same story over and over again, the moment you'd rather feel pain from growth than regret from standing still. That's when the shift happens. Not when you learn something new, not when you hear another motivational speech, but when you get sick of your own patterns, when you finally decide to outgrow your own limitations. Because your future isn't waiting. It's deteriorating while you hesitate, and your excuses don't care. They'll let it all slip away, so long as you stay comfortable in the moment. This is why some people make it, and others stay where they are. It's not just discipline. It's a refusal to keep playing small. Not a special skill. Not perfect timing. Just the courage to stop hiding from the mirror. You face the truth. You own the habits. And you accept what needs to change. Because once you do that, once you let the excuses die, you're no longer stuck. You're just choosing the level you're living at. And that choice? That's where all your power lives. The choice to act before it feels good. The choice to move while you're still unsure. The choice to begin without applause, without support, without clarity. The choice to build anyway. To grow anyway. To push forward anyway. That's not just how you get momentum, that's how you kill excuses. For good. Not with a perfect plan, not with ideal circumstances, but with movement. Because excuses can't survive when you're in motion. They lose their grip when you keep going. And if you keep going long enough, something strange happens. You stop needing them altogether. You don't need to convince yourself anymore. You don't need to justify or explain. You just do the work. And that's when the results start showing up. Not because you got lucky, not because it got easier, but because you stopped giving yourself a way out. That's where the future begins. In the place where you stop escaping the work and start becoming the person who demands more. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now, if you're still listening, it's not by accident. Something in you is already tired of hiding behind delay. Not just tired of falling short, tired of watching yourself do it and pretending it's fine. That's what excuses demand from you. They don't just steal your time, they steal your standards. They push you to accept less than what you know you're capable of just so you can avoid pressure. But pressure isn't the enemy. Avoidance is. Because every time you dodge the hard thing, you're reinforcing the idea that discomfort is something to run from. And over time, that builds a version of you that's easy to defeat. The world doesn't care about your internal battles. It only reacts to what you do. And if what you do is make excuses, the world will leave you behind. Not because you're not good enough, but because you're standing still. You don't need more advice. You don't need another list of tips. You need a decision. One decision that becomes non-negotiable. One shift that says, I'm done stalling. I'm done defending the behaviors that are killing my future. Because the hard truth is this. Nobody can outwork the damage their own excuses are causing. It doesn't matter how much potential you were born with. If you let yourself off the hook every time it gets uncomfortable, none of that matters. You'll go through life explaining what you could have done while watching others live it. And that hurts. Not because they're better than you, but because they stopped making excuses before you did. Somewhere out there, someone with less talent, less time, fewer resources, is building something you keep talking about. Not because they had it easier, because they stopped negotiating with weakness. That's all excuses are. Tiny negotiations with weakness. 100 little moments where you chose comfort over progress. And you told yourself it was fine, but it's not fine. It's never been fine. That's why you're here now, feeling the weight of everything you haven't done yet. You think you need more time, but what you really need is honesty. You think you're stuck, but what you really are is afraid to start. Not because you can't, but because starting removes the option to hide. Once you begin, you have to follow through. Once you commit, the excuse loses its value. That's why it's easier to talk than act. because talking lets you sound ready without proving anything. But every day you delay action, you strengthen the voice that wants you average. And that voice will do anything to survive. It will use your past. It will use your fears. It will even use your ambitions, twisting them into reasons to wait longer. It'll say, "Don't rush it. You want to do this the right way. Take your time. No need to force anything. Be patient. You'll get there eventually." But it's lying. Because eventually only comes if you move. Eventually only exists if you stop giving yourself an exit every time it's hard. You've made it this far by surviving, but if you want to thrive, you can't use the same mindset. Survival listens to excuses and calls them safety. Growth hears those same excuses and answers with action. That's the shift. Not louder motivation. Not another plan. A new relationship with resistance. You stop fearing the hard days. You stop explaining your way around the work. You stop romanticizing the version of you that's comfortable. You build new momentum. Quietly, consistently, without debate. And one day, you look up, and the old version of you is gone. The one that stalled, the one that waited, the one that made excuses for everything. Gone. Replaced by someone who doesn't need convincing to do what needs to be done. You get up, you execute, and you move forward. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when it's painful. Even when no one notices. And you start to realize that version of you, the one who didn't ask for easier days, the one who didn't care if it was fair or fun or balanced, that version was inside you the entire time. It was just buried under comfort. Not weakness, not failure, just excuses. Now you know, and once you know, you can't unknow. So the next time you feel resistance rise up, don't run from it. Don't explain it away. Don't wait for it to disappear. Let it remind you that you're getting closer. Let it remind you that most people would stop here, and that you won't. Let it remind you that everything you want is sitting behind the version of you that still needs to justify everything. Let it remind you that excuses aren't part of your identity anymore. They were never facts, just choices you no longer make. You're not here to protect your limitations. You're here to eliminate them. And when the day comes that someone asks how you did it, you won't talk about perfect timing. You won't mention luck. You'll just say, "I faced everything I kept avoiding. I stopped negotiating with the part of me that wanted comfort, and I became someone who did the work no matter what it cost."